Morning, everybody. It's really good to be back. My name is Darcy McCann. I'm director of the Northeast Kingdom Chamber of Commerce, and believe it or not, this is the first in-person meeting we have held in 2 years. I'll try this one. I tried this one. This is a little bit better, I think. I just wanted to thank everybody for the support and kindness they've shown us over the last 2 years as the chamber. It's been a difficult time, but we're holding our own. I thank Scoop Dunn over there at the table. It was going to be hard to see an empty chair without Jen Garand, who passed away in November 2020, and it's really good for you to step up and help us here. It's good to see a familiar face over there. We also want to recognize when I started back in 1995 for the chamber, we've always had one of the Hammers here. Ken Hammer was first, and he did it for about 10 years and did an unbelievable job, and he got busy with teaching and consulting, and Gretchen Hammer stepped up. Gretchen has been one of my longtime friends and one of the best mentors I've ever had, and we're transitioning to Laurel Ruggles, a very familiar face from recently retired from NVRH, as our new moderator, but I say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for the Hammers, for all the love and support and commitment they've shown, not only to the chamber, to the region, and I can't thank Gretchen enough for all that she's done, serving as moderator of this event for about 15 years. We are going to start on the legislators. Laurel's going to get up and serve as our timekeeper. I'll be doing some of that, and just get this going and find out what's going on over in Montpelier. So Laurel, without further ado, here you go.
Thank you, Darcy. Good morning. So as has been our tradition, we're going to start with our senators, and then for our representatives we'll go in alphabetical order, which will mean we'll start with Representative Scott Beck. We don't have a big crowd here today, so there'll be some, but probably not a lot of questions, so you can take a little bit more time if you'd like this morning. Jane, would you start us off?
Sure. Oh, thank you.
The reason I'm cautious with the mask this morning, my sister and my nephew just have been tested positive for COVID. And out of respect for everyone here, I have my mask. First of all, thank you. This is sort of the end of the season. I guess I would just like to say, first of all, that the thing that weighs on me the most is the fact that the volume of emails is just unmanageable for one person. So I want to say to anybody, if you sent me an email and I haven't responded, I certainly read them all every day, but the volume is well beyond what I can manage. And the other part is, once we're in Washington, in Montpelier, our days start and are totally booked, really, oftentimes before committee work. I have regular meeting schedules through lunch, and then when I chair a committee, so it's not as though we can sit there and do emails simultaneously and give attention to the testimony and the courtesy that people who are testifying really warrant. So if I have not responded, I apologize. I hope you can understand. It's just not enough hours in the day. I do chair the Senate Appropriations Committee, and we have voted out the budget, and we actually have our committee of conference been formed, and we are going to start working out the differences between the House-passed budget and the Senate-passed budget. I wanted to say that there are a couple of areas that are different in the Senate. First of all, the House, when building their budget, there had been a bill passed creating a new child credit through the tax system and would be refundable, and the impact of that was to reduce the revenues available to support the budget by about $48 million. When the Senate took up the bill, we identified some other areas that we felt really needed to be funded before a new benefit. And one is right here, somewhat dear to all of us, but that is fulfilling our commitment to stabilize our state college system. And so in the Senate, we did fully fund the FY23 cost, estimated cost for the transition. That includes one-time money, bridge money, we call it about $15 million, and then an increase on the base. The other thing that you may have heard in the press, and that is the governor isn't fond of the budget. I've heard that he likes the Senate better than the House. I don't know if that's true or not. I doubt it. And there are a couple of areas where he's already said he is not happy. I would say probably in the area of economic development would be where his concerns are focused. One of the things that we did in the budget adjustment, which is the 22 budget, was actually to spend more of the federal money, the ARPA money, than the governor was proposing. And part of that was recognition that we needed to do more to stabilize our healthcare workforce system. So we had a total of $60 million in the BAA toward that end, because we were hearing that key healthcare providers were really struggling, and it's with workforce, and particularly in healthcare, if you're paying the cost of traveling nurses, that adds costs very, very quickly. And I'll give you an example. Nursing homes, I believe in 2019, paid about $23 million for traveling nurses statewide. They estimate this year will be between $56 and $58 million, and that is to care for our most vulnerable individuals. So you can see how workforce and cost have greatly influenced the very agencies that Vermonters depend on for their services. In the end, we were able to, because we did not make the child tax credit as expansive and as costly as was in the bill passed by the House, we had more money to work with, but we had things that we really had no choice to address. The personal care attendants, these are individuals who provide care for our seniors and people with intellectual or developmental disabilities and in their homes, and that's part of our state policy, is to support people in their homes and communities. They negotiated, they're in a labor union, and they negotiate a salary increase. Still a very modest amount of money for the essential work that's being provided to individuals. So we also raised the increase, provider increase to our designated agencies. These are mental health agencies, and sometimes they serve both mental health and developmental services, which is true for here in the Northeast Kingdom. The House had a 7% increase. We were able to raise it to 8%. The agencies were saying they really needed 10 in order to get stabilized, address their workload pressures. And also they operate small facilities, so the cost of food and fuel and so forth has also gone up. The other area I know people are really interested in, and when we go out and talk to people in the public, a number of things are on their mind. First of all, broadband and how that ties into economic development, as well as supporting health care and education. We have $95 million appropriated for broadband. There was a special pot of money that came to the state under the federal funding, once again under ARPA. And so $95 million of that went to broadband. Housing, we have continued to fund, and this budget includes $70 million more for housing, and you're seeing a lot of housing under development in towns all around, whether it's West Burke or here in St. Johnsbury, Lindenville, and so forth. And then clean water, $94 million. There's, I have to say, one of the things that happens is any bill that has any spending or impact on spending has to come to appropriations. So in addition to getting the budget out, I think on Thursday we actually had 9 bills that we took up in order to get out so they can be conferenced. A couple that we still have pending, and I know it's controversial. One is the clean heat standard, and what conditions should go into that in terms of a check back on the part of the legislature before any standard is implemented or a plan put in place. The other is creating an office. It's called Advocate for Children and Youth. It is kind of an oversight and investigatory entity that has been a bill passed by the House, and it's in our committee. It would create a commission. It would create an office to advocate for families and children. The price tag is only $120,000, which seems like perhaps when you look at the scope of what that office to do is very expansive. So I sort of feel that the appropriation and what will be the actual total cost in the future is probably not reflected in something that we have to take a deeper look at. The other area that the governor has been out there, and that's on pensions. And this has to do with pensions for state employees as well as our teachers. There was a pension oversight task force that was created, and you may recollect that there was very rancorous discussions within the legislature a year ago, and no action was really taken except to create an oversight committee, as well as to create a pension investment committee that really would have expertise to really manage the funds. And I think people felt that the returns on the investments had not been at the level that they should have been, and having this special committee should help address that issue by bringing the best thinking to bear. And the pension task force met, and then you may have read in December, the pro tem asked me if I would work on putting together a proposal to take the work that the task force and convert it into some kind of a financing package. And I would say that the emphasis has been on pensions and the underfunding of pensions. But one thing that if you're on appropriations, you know that also we have, for retirees, a health care benefit. And the underfunding for the health care benefit, because it had never been pre-funded, it's like so easy to create a benefit and say we're going to worry about it later. And then whoever's around later is really tasked with trying to figure out how to address it. And so the package that I had worked with the task force addressed both the pension underfunding and the health care underfunding, and setting up pre-funding for health care for currently retired state employees and teachers, so that there's the advantage of investing and compounding and getting away from the very costly pay-go, which is all dollar for dollar. The governor doesn't like the package. He wants to have other things added, and the commitment was to keep it a clean package reflecting the negotiations, and then the task force or the oversight committee would then take other options and considerations and make proposals for changes. So that is where we are in Senate appropriations, and I think at this point I'll turn it over to Senator Benning. Oh, where is he? He ran away. Oh, you wipe it off, yes.
COVID protocols here.
Yeah.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Benning. For those of you that don't know me, for those of you that do, I'm still Joe Benning, and I am the junior state senator from Caledonia County, at least for the moment. I'm going to start with the bad news first. The Northeast Kingdom has lost one of its 4 state senators after the next election. Population shifted in such a way that the northwestern part of the state has gained a seat, and we here in the kingdom have lost a seat. The division is such that the town of Linden and Kirby will now be part of the Essex County Senatorial District. And Terry, I love you, but I'm not sure. I was looking forward to Essex for the folks who are in Linden and Kirby. Everything from north of Linden, meaning Newark, Sutton, Burke, Wheelock, and Sheffield, are now part of the Orleans County District, and the Caledonia County District is now down to 1 seat, encompassing everything from St. Johnsbury through Danville, Waterford, and south, including the town of Newbury. As you may know, at the end of the day, it is the legislature that makes that ultimate call in how it is broken up. So from the town of Linden, I just want to say, thanks a lot, guys. I'm going to shift now to some of the more interesting news in the legislature. And I should have started by saying it still remains an honor and a privilege to be able to serve in this role. The committees that I serve on are judiciary and institutions, the latter of which I chair. And I'll start with institutions. I'm very happy to say that we are going to complete the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail this year. We have some conversations ongoing about the court system and how to get it reopened, but those conversations are going on in somewhat heated capacity in various quarters. We have, as a financial committee, or a money committee, if you will, the responsibility at the end of the day, once we've come up with a budget, and in our case this year it was roughly $127 million, we have to go back through the Appropriations Committee in order to have that approved officially before it can go out the door of the Senate, which means I have to go to my seatmates committee and beg and grovel and ask for permission to get this through.
Don't believe him.
This year, we had the brilliant idea of sending our youngest member, Senator Ingalls, to Senator Kitchell with a bouquet of flowers. What she doesn't know is that we had him go out through every graveyard locally and pull as many flowers as he could before he got them there. Although I'm not sure they weren't plastic. But in any event, it was probably the quickest I was ever able to get through the Appropriations Committee, so that's probably going to be how institutions approaches appropriations in the future. There's an ongoing conversation about the Woodside facility being replaced with a location in Newbury. That is in litigation, and I have advised my committee, as well as anybody who asks me, that we are trying to stay out of the middle of the litigation. That question was brought up in front of us initially. There are some very hard feelings as a result of what's going on there, and the folks in Newbury had voted against it. Their official municipal organizations had voted against it, but the state is continuing on to try to have it basically forced through. And so it got into litigation, and that's probably the last I should be speaking about it. I'm happy to say that yesterday I was at the St. Albans Maple Festival Parade, and there were thousands and thousands of people along that parade route. So there is some glimmer of hope for the future that we're finally coming out of the COVID routine. With that, I am cognizant that there are 6 other people who need to speak here, so I'm going to cut my remarks short, and I hope this great and wonderful audience here has a whole lot of questions for us when we're done. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Representative Scott Beck, you could come up next.
Thank you, Laurel.
Good morning.
Good morning. Before I get into a couple bills, my district is changing as well. St. Johnsbury, which was, I believe, the smallest by population 2-seat district in the state, will now be the largest by population 2-seat district in the state, as we will be joined with Kirby and Concord for the next 10 years until we do reapportionment again. And maybe it'll change or maybe not, but so anyhow, I'm excited about that. Bills that we have been looking at in my committee, House Ways and Means, we'll be looking at again. They're all Senate bills. Senate Bill 53, which goes to conference on Tuesday, and I'll be on that conference committee. It's a bill that has a whole myriad of different corporate tax reforms in it, the biggest of which is moving Vermont to what is called a single sales corporate tax liability. And what that basically means is right now, present law, under C Corp in Vermont, their liability tax liability is determined by 2 times their sales. They count their sales twice, their property taxes once, and their the income they pay out once, and they compare that to the whole corporation all around the world, and that's what determines the tax liability to Vermont. In S53, that would move to single sales, which means sales would be the only thing that would count. So that's a big change, and it follows on the market-based sourcing, which we did a couple years ago. And there are dozens of other things in 53, but that's the big one, I think. My committee also took a look at Senate Bill 286 recently. That's the pension bill that Jane just mentioned. And I will say this, that it is my opinion that Senator Kitchell did the absolute best job that could have been done in negotiating this pension bill. Fantastic job. I will also say we're coming back in 5 to 7 years to this bill, because while Jane was able to make everybody take a huge step, it was not the entire step. We're likely not going to make 7% on our investment return. The experience study is likely going to go the other direction. It always does. And we'll be coming back to pensions, I would say, sooner rather than later. But the problem will be far, far, far less than it would have been without the efforts of Jane, that's for sure. We've also, we sent Senate Bill 287 back over to the Senate. That's the waiting bill. There are big differences between the two versions of the bill. I think we'll likely go to conference on it. It's been an interesting conversation over waiting. I would say, unfortunately, right now is that the Northeast Kingdom, with the Senate, whether the bill where it is right now, the Northeast Kingdom is getting the short end of the stick. Most of our districts will have a higher tax rate than they would have had if we had done another option, or if we had just fixed the underlying funding formula. Our biggest district around here would pay 12 cents more under waiting than just fixing the whole formula. But that's going to go to conference, and there are big differences between the two. The biggest is the implementation date. One is 25 and the other is 24. And I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't even hazard to guess what the outcome of that will be. S100, which is the Universal School Meals Bill, is likely also going to conference, or will be wrapped into some other discussion. And right now, the difference is the Senate is just at breakfast, and the House is at lunch and breakfast, but only for 23 funded. And so there are big differences there, and we'll see where we end up on those. And there are many others, but I'll save my time for everybody else.
Okay, Scott Campbell next, and then followed by Marty Phelps.
Laurel. We have quite a crowd here today. I was glad that Jane mentioned, I guess I could take this off. See. Jane mentioned having emails pile up. I've certainly had emails pile up this year like never before, and apologies to everyone who has tried to reach me and I haven't responded to. Somebody came up to me at the farmer's market last week saying that she'd sent me an email and was waiting for my response and hadn't gotten it, and I don't seem to have ever received it. So anyway, apologies if I have missed your email. I'm going to talk about corrections this time. I'm on the Corrections and Institutions Committee on the House side, and we spent a great deal of the first part of the session on the capital budget, which we sent over to Joe's committee, and now we are turning our attention to corrections policy. As most people know, the corrections has been in a staffing crisis for years, and the pandemic has only made it worse, quite a lot worse. The corrections officer's primary job is security, of course, but they also inevitably serve a social worker function to some extent. In building a relationship with people who are incarcerated is key to de-escalating tense situations. And when the building's short-staffed, that's very difficult to do. The COs, the corrections officers, are exhausted from mandatory overtime, and there's really very little opportunity for relationship building. The last few weeks, we held a series of joint hearings with House Government Operations Committee to hear about recruitment and retention issues of staff at DOC. We got a lot of really great testimony from COs, from parole officers, and from also the educational division of corrections, and the training academy that trains new corrections officers. The commissioner, the new commissioner, is a fellow named Nick Demmel. He's a young guy. He's been very impressive. He listened in, as well as the chief of operations, Al Cormier, who most folks here remember from being superintendent of the local facility for several years. Top of the list for the staff is higher pay. Probably no surprise there. The starting pay right now is $19 and something. I don't know the exact number, but they feel that increasing that pay would go a long way towards getting more folks in the door. They also are seeking a clearer career path, which is something the commissioner has talked about a lot as well. Their thoughts were perhaps adding another step. Right now, if you're a corrections officer, you can be a CO1, a CO2, or a shift supervisor, and they would like a little bit more sort of recognition of the different skills that corrections requires. They were also looking for a pension reform so that they would be eligible for their pension in 20 years, like law enforcement officers are, state troopers. And I believe that is in an amendment to the pension bill that will be up on the floor tomorrow for the House. Another thing that we heard a lot about was how these facilities, which are all masonry buildings, are like ovens in the summer, and they, especially now with climate change and a lot more days in the 90s, air conditioning is becoming not just a nice to have, but really a health issue. Let's see. After we heard from all these folks, we had sort of a discussion between the committees, GovOps and Corrections and Institutions, about what we heard and what we felt like we still needed to hear. We did not hear from incarcerated individuals, either current or former, and that seemed like an important part also. We did review a survey that was done, I guess, last year, or we heard a report about it this year, a survey of both incarcerated individuals and corrections staff at Southern State in Springfield. Excuse me. And that survey was, I mentioned it in a previous legislative breakfast, was very revealing about challenges and stresses that people are under in the facilities, both staff and incarcerated individuals. So a lot of agreement of what needs to be done. Again, the staffing crisis, the lack of people, what they felt as the lack of communication, the lack of engagement with central office, which again I think we were hoping is going to get better, and lack of anything productive to do for the incarcerated individuals was really big issues for them, and lack of preparation to return to the community. Most of these folks are going to get out again. One point that was mentioned by a CO that I found particularly revealing, thank you, is the availability of MAT, the medically assisted treatment, that seems to have coincided with a great deal of lessening of violence in the facilities. I thought that was a very interesting juxtaposition. Let's see, I only have a minute left. What am I going to let you know about further? Well, this week we'll be reviewing the capital budget that came out of Joe's committee, and we'll have to fix that. And then we'll also consider a few more corrections policy issues. One being dealing with justice-involved youth. Joe, I think, mentioned the issue with the replacement of the Woodside secure facility for youth that has been closed, and the state wanted to put a new facility in, or put a replacement facility in Newbury. So that, if that appeal fails, then we're back to square one and we have to deal with that. So I'll leave it at that. Pass it on to the next person.
Thank you, Scott. So Marty Feltus next, and then John Kaczynski, you'll be up. Give you a heads up.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning, everyone that's here and hopefully listening on the radio. I appreciate the audience and the chance to be here. Nearing the end of our legislative session, we're all telling you about things that are have been percolating all session, and they've gone to the House and the Senate and back and forth, and now we have some conference committees. I serve on the Appropriations Committee, and Jane has given you a very good overview of where we stand on that. Yes, the House produced a budget and the Senate produced a budget, and of course the governor produced a budget. A lot of very same themes in all of them. I would characterize them as being in great agreement, all three versions. However, there are obviously always a few things that, just have to get sorted out. And, we have one single pot of money to work with, and it's just a matter of priorities, or, what one person or one group feels is, more important than others, and how you split that up. Indeed, in somewhat the House's, not defense, but the Senate did have more money to work with, in that the Senate made a different decision regarding the tax bill. So there was a few more, $13 million more, I guess, to work with than the House had. However, I am pleased to say that we were able to allocate the remaining, $500 million of money from the ARPA, the second half of that $1 billion that we received, and we did stay within the 5 categories that the 2 houses of the legislature and the governor had agreed with, and that is broadband and housing, economic development, climate issues, and clean water. And we, there are slight differences in each of those, but nevertheless, we kept that, what we consider to be long-term money, and the governor considers it to be long-term money. We want to put that into projects that will indeed have a lasting impact to us all. And as far as the Northeast Kingdom is concerned, certainly I am very pleased with the money that's going into broadband. We are fortunate in that our Northeast Kingdom Communications Union District is very well poised to take advantage of that money that our group started about 3 years ago. And so we've done a lot of the preliminary work, the planning, the infrastructure, not the infrastructure work, but the design work ahead of time with other grant money that we were able to receive. So we are ready to get going, whereas some of the other districts in the state still need time to get moving. But there is going to be a lot of money available, and that's very helpful to us all. And Vermont State Colleges. We, of course, in this area are delighted to make sure that the Linden campus will remain in existence and will remain a viable institution. So those are things that are important to us. Nursing education, we've talked about, is important to us locally, as well as arts organizations. There is money in this budget to help the arts organizations recover from the pandemic. There's money that went before, but there is still a need there. And as was mentioned also, the rate increase that's available for the designated agencies. That workforce needs to be shored up, and so House was able to do some, the Senate was able to do even more, and we are pleased with that. There are indeed some IT projects, information technology projects at the state level to help the state government work better. I was deeply involved in those, and I am glad that those are still part of the budget. So I want to conclude my comments regarding my work on appropriations. It has been fulfilling. I have really enjoyed it. I am announcing that I am not running for re-election. I have been in the House for 5 terms now, and it's been an honor and it's been a privilege to serve. I have appreciated the support of my 3 communities for the last 10 years, and I deeply appreciate that. I think I have been effective to help in the appropriations area. My first 2 years in the House, I worked on natural resources and energy, and that was very informative as well. We were talking a lot about wind energy, solar energy, net metering, electricity, climate, all of those issues, which are still, of course, very important to us. So that has given me a good background to deal with those as we look at them in the budget. But I do want to comment, I have certainly enjoyed being in the legislature. It has been an honor to do so, and I do appreciate everyone's support, but I hope we find some more great folks, and I'm sure we will, to continue on this process. Thanks.
So John Kaczynska is up next, and then Marsha Martell, followed by Terry Williams.
Great, thanks so much, Laurel. I'm John Kaczynska, newly appointed to legislature. I was officially sworn in on March 8th, and it's an absolute honor to serve in that role, and finishing a term by former Representative Patrick Seymour, who unfortunately needed to step away at that time. I've gotten a ton of support from everyone here, sitting on either side of me here, to help get me oriented to working in the State House. And I had the pleasure of stepping into service right in the middle of crossover week, or the week before crossover week. So the learning curve was a little bit steep here, but just tremendous support here from the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development, which is the committee I was appointed to. We've been doing a tremendous amount of work. There's been a number of bills that have emanated out of our committee here, and we've had an opportunity to move those through House approval, and currently awaiting formal likely revised language here from the Senate Committee on Economic Development as well. And our committee anticipates receiving their language suggestions and changes here for us to be reviewing. So we're really kind of looking for the next couple of weeks here to be quite full here for our committee. We've had a chance to meet with a number of individuals who provided valuable testimony here for us to help shape the number of bills that we've been working with here. We've had a handful of visits from Representative Feltus. Thanks for coming in and keeping us straight and helping us to understand a bit better here where the monies may be best appropriated. I'm not going to list all the bills that we've worked on here this session here, but most recently here we've been working on a number of parts of House Bill 703, which is an act related to promoting workforce development. We know that a number of our businesses continue to need support. We know that we need to upscale and train future workers here and current workers here as well to help build their skills to move into much needed positions here across the state. So I'm going to just provide a little bit of a general list here of some parts of H703 here for us. One is to develop a skilled meat cutter training and apprentice facility at VTC. We actually need more of those kinds of facilities, and this is a wonderful opportunity here for us to provide that opportunity. We've been working to identify some additional financial support here for career and technical education centers here across the state to assist them in expanding the technical training opportunities that they offer here, both for current high school students, but also for members of our community who are looking to gain some technical training to move into much needed professional positions. We have also part of our bill is a pilot program that we're looking at here to facilitate educational and vocational training among incarcerated individuals to increase their likelihood to obtain gainful employment upon reintegration back into our communities. We feel that's a really important part of that bill as well. Supporting scholarships here and loan programs here, scholarship programs for the Vermont Trades Loan Reimbursement Program, a current program we want to continue moving with. Loan programs through VEDA, Vermont Economic Development Authority, to help businesses continue to overcome the shortfalls they've experienced during the COVID time period that we are still in. Funding for Vermont Serve, Learn, and Earn programs we have, which serves providing opportunities here to train our youth with things such as trail building to help maintain our networks here. We also are taking a look at in our bill here some grant funding for the UVM Office of Engagement. For recent graduates, we're not only our higher education institutions are wonderful institutions here to provide opportunities for students to earn degrees at all levels here. We want to keep those graduates here. And so there's a little bit of an incentive program there to provide some funding while they're in school to help keep them here and move into job openings. More funding to help support internships and apprenticeships here to kind of bridge those relationships between students and employers. And again, all to help us to keep and connect folks here to work here in the state of Vermont and fill much needed open positions. A significant portion of that bill is in relation to nursing. And nursing has been mentioned here already. Here we are certainly experiencing still a shortage of nurses here. We have nurses who are in current positions, and people do move in and out of those positions here for various reasons. Our health institutions, our hospitals here, our local hospital here, I know employs a number of visiting nurses to help fill some of those gaps. And we're just trying to upgrade what we're doing here in the state to train more nurses. And in a couple of important parts of that here is to provide some funding to increase the nursing program here, locally here. We've had nurses participating in nursing education to earn degrees here through our local institution here. Linden State College 20 years ago, Northern Vermont University, now to become Vermont State University. We want to continue to build that nursing program there, which requires increasing facilities and equipment so we can really hopefully double the capacity of students coming out of that program here. In support, and over time here, we've had great support here from Castleton State University here and VTC here, which is our current provider here to train nurses. But also we have to provide some support here too for our nursing professional nursing educators here at all levels. And so we have some monies in that bill to hopefully increase their compensation to help retain them as well. And finally here, I guess I just mentioned here too, we also want to provide direct assistance to students in nursing programs through some forgivable loan programs, some grants and scholarships. And I think at the end of the day here, that's just going to benefit our state here in whole and certainly our region. I think we're all experiencing changes in our district here. Currently, Marty and I represent Burke, Linden, and Sutton. So we represent 3 towns. And with new reapportionment, Burke is actually going to be pulled away from Linden, both in the House redistricting. Joe mentioned a change in the Senate redistricting here. So Burke will join 9 other towns in that new districting here. And those towns would include, so be Burke, joining Victory, Lunenburg, East Haven, Granby, my seatmate just on the same row where we sit together here in the House, Guildhall, Ferdinand, Maidstone, Brunswick, and Bloomfield. We're not the only place in the state of Vermont where those changes are happening. We're seeing some significant changes in a few other locations as well. And I'm very honored to serve the current district here, and I certainly would look forward to representing a new district as it's been defined here so far. So thank you very much. Very happy to be here today, and certainly look forward to any questions folks may have here towards the end. Thank you.
Where'd you get that jacket?
Marsha Martel next, and then Terry Williams.
Thank you, and good morning. And it's kind of hard to follow up after Scott and I are on the same committee, and Joe's on institutions too, but we will be meeting with Joe and Russ Ingalls on tomorrow to go over the capital bill and kind of spar out our differences. And Joe, I have to say one thing to you. Your beans are in my freezer.
Oh, thank you.
After tomorrow, we'll see. But one thing I wanted to say about state colleges, they came into our committee to testify, and they're starting to sell off buildings they don't use. They took a survey, and the amount of time people spend in classes is like 2 to 3 hours a day, if that. So they have all this room, and they're not using it. So we asked them if they would, as they sell off buildings, let us know how much they made off them, just so that we would kind of get an idea of how they were doing on it. So we'll wait and see if that happens. But other than that, we'll see how the capital bill comes out tomorrow and see if we do have to go to conference committee. As we know, both chairs aren't too keen on that. But I don't have a whole lot other to say other than following Marty Feltus's lead, I won't be running again either. I'm going to step into, as you all know, I'm going to be on the select board in Waterford and try to get my town turned around first. And that's very important to me, and I've enjoyed the 8 years that I've been there. And I've learned a lot, and I just wanted to, I hope we get someone that will replace me that will be as proud to serve as I was. Thank you.
Good morning. First, I'd like to let you know that my maiden name is Wilson. My married name is Williams, so ever since I was born, I was always last up on the list. When it comes to eating food, that's not a good thing. But when it comes to having a speech, time's running out, and I can make it short. So, I want to express my sadness for the fact that we're going to be losing Marty Feltus and Marcia Martel, because they have been tremendous mentors to me, and I'm going to miss that tremendously. So, reapportionment. As Representative Kaczynski has mentioned, he and I will be in the same district. Whoever comes out here in the end, I give high respect for the other representative, and we have worked well together and get along well. And we both deserve your support, so I wish you good luck in figuring that one out. I will be losing Concord and Kirby. And that is pretty devastating to me, because Concord is my mainstay. That's where I grew up. That's where I've run my businesses. That's where I've worked with the children and the community. And it's going to be a great loss. And I'm very jealous of St. Johnsbury area. They're lucky. They're very lucky. And Kirby has supported me through my business at Barney's Market. They are the ones that seem to come to me with a lot of questions that I really appreciate finding information for. And please, Concord and Kirby, know that just because I'm not representing you on paper, I will not be forgetting you. You are part of who I am, so keep that in mind. I brought up a bunch of paper because I wanted you to be nervous thinking that I was having a long speech, but really I'm not. As mentioned, S-287, which is in the, an education bill, which is also best known as either the funding formula bill or the waiting bill, is passing through, as Representative Beck has stated. I won't go through that, but I do want to say that the task force gets an A+ from me, and the thoughtful work they have put into making this a very good bill. S-100, another bill that we've discussed already today, that the Education Committee has worked a great deal on. That will be coming up for a vote I believe, in the very near future. And I support that one 300%. One of the bills that hasn't yet been discussed is S-139, which is an act relating to non-discriminatory school branding, which is also called the mascot bill. This bill is expected to be voted out of the House Education Committee sometime this week. As you can imagine, this is a very controversial bill. The big controversy being, should the legislature be involved, or should the decision be made at the local level? Another bill that I have been watching that's in the process, talks about hunting coyote with dogs. I have watched much of the testimony and am very pleased with our Commissioner of Fish and Wildlife. I have high hopes this bill will pass with compromises that support and give balance to all parties affected. A brief mention of a miscellaneous bill. A couple of things within that are, should there be a standardized entrance age threshold for public school kindergarten? That is something that's going to be studied. Another is it is asking for a report and recommendations for a statewide uniform school calendar. Another study and report that's going to come back to us. And the third is a statewide remote learning policy. As you know, remote learning has become a part of our lives, and the question will be, do we count these days, if they are needed, as school days? So that's another piece of information that will come back to us. And that's it, all this paper, and that's all I really have. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. So we do have a few minutes for questions, and Darcy's going to man the microphone out there, and I'll man it up here.
Hi, I'm glad to see this meeting finally in live conference. My name's Steve Baker. I live in Kirby, Vermont, and I've just got a couple things that I wanted to discuss briefly. One of them is this redistricting, and I know about the population basis and how many representatives per that district. I think it's wrong that Burlington has 6. I don't think any district needs more than 2, because it stacks the deck, and Burlington usually gets what they want somehow. That's one thing. The other is, it seems to me like we've spent a great deal of money on housing, like Rural Edge, for instance, Housing Vermont, and also on bike paths. And I realize a lot of this is federal money, and the state has to cough up some of it. But one of the things I found, and I've known about this for years, I was at a diner in Massachusetts, and they have a license plate for your bicycle. Small issue, right? I understand they were about $2 back in 1960. I see no reason at all why Vermont can't have this on bikes in the bike path at a nominal charge, maybe $25 or $50 a year, to help regroup some of the money that was spent. I mean, you have to register your boat, your motorcycle, your four-wheeler, snowmobiles, et cetera, et cetera. I know the state needs revenue. Here's a way to do it with very little effort. Just a swipe of the pen. I don't feel it's right that people get to ride the bike trails for nothing, and snowmobilers have to pay, and I'm not a snowmobiler. But
Mr. Baker, do you have a question for one of the legislators this morning?
yes, I do. In particular, let's see, this bill about the E15 gasoline coming from the federal government, It's the worst thing that could possibly happen. I hope it doesn't happen in Vermont. The gradual conversion, it appears, for electric cars, it's a nice theory unless you live on a dirt road with 2 feet of mud. They have about 4 inches of ground clearance. You can't get home. And it costs fossil fuels to make. I believe that will be directed towards Scott Camp. It's not really feasible. It's a nice try. It's a good, reasonable plan. It's not going to work. If you live in a rural area, if you live downtown on paved roads, that's one thing. But I guess at the Transportation Board, I mean, I look at the Clean Water Act, and it's a big issue, and yet at the same time, we're dumping more than $75 million a year in road salt. Except for the interstate, it's a complete waste of money. It could be reduced by 80%. Mandatory snow tires. Texting and driving, $1,000 first offense. There's no reason for it, it's gotta stop.
Did you have a question you wanted someone to respond to?
Yeah, anybody that would like to respond to any of my statements, I would welcome it. Thank you.
From Senator Benning?
Steve, I just want to take up the reapportionment question. The Chittenden six-pack has now been broken up. We brought a bill 2 years ago to have that done. It is now 2 3-member and 1 single-member setup, so that that six-pack no longer will have the same strength that it once did. But I just wanted you to know that's one thing I'm sort of proud of getting through the process. Thanks.
Thank you.
Steve, I guess since you mentioned my name, I should say something. I guess you were concerned about EVs and low ground clearance of electric vehicle cars. You probably have heard that the F-150 is going to coming out in an electric version sometime this year, and that's, I mean, a lot of people are pretty excited about it. EVs are fun to drive. They're a lot quicker.
They don't work on a dirt road during mud season.
Yeah, well, right. I got stuck in the mud this year myself in my car, but that's, trucks are a little bit higher off the ground, and so I bet the F-150 would work just fine. Any other questions?
I'll bring it up to you, John.
Hi, Steve. You made mention about something about bike paths there, and we have quite a few biking networks around the state. Or obviously here, and our most prominent one here is the Kingdom Trails, and that's all on private property here as well. But I think you're probably making a reference to the ones that are on like the rail trail.
It's the rail trail.
Right, and there's a shared utilization there, snowmobiling, versus like biking. Right, and they pay through their trail associations here and have to pay their fee here per year. I don't think it's a bad idea to have that kind of conversation here to kind of help, support, trail maintenance. And there's maintenance that has to happen here, and perhaps that may help to phrase something along those lines. I'm happy to speak more about it if you have more specific ideas and details about that. The rail trail we have here is pretty popular, avenue for folks to get out and recreate, spring, summer, fall, and winter here for sure. So I certainly support them, just bring people here as they do stop and purchase, food and gas and those kinds of things. Snowmobiling, I'm kind of thinking about here primarily here, but happy to speak with you further if you have ideas about how to perhaps detail more of that out through some good conversation. Thank you.
So we are at time here today, and I do want to thank all of our legislators for their time here this morning and for your service to our region and to the state. I also want to acknowledge our media partners here today. We've got Kingdom Access TV, who recorded this so people can watch this later, and also Caledonia Record here, so we can, if you missed it today, you can read all about it tomorrow. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
The next date?
Oh, we do plan to have one on May 23rd.